Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. Right, I'm going to pick up my bit of paper because I've got a lot of stuff to read out and it's very, very important because I've got a bit to say. I'm on a mission today on this video to make my position perfectly clear. Because certain things have come to my attention about what James Gunn's been saying, and it's very important that you understand where I stand with all of this. So, we know that Superman is in production. Okay. Peacemaker Series 2 to shoot in the summer at the same time as Superman. James Gunn won't direct all the episodes, right? Do you understand? So there'll be some new directors on some of the episodes of Peacemaker 2, right? So Peacemaker Series 2 will be canon to DC Universe, and not the DCEU. Now, certain things that were set up with his backstory will still be canon. I think James will pick and choose what remains canon or not. Peacemaker will continue canonically after Superman, after the events of Superman. So do you get it? They will react to those events, which I think is very exciting and it makes sense. Okay, so Creature Commandos is a Superman prequel. It's a prequel to the Superman movie. So the events in Creature Commandos come before the Superman film. Right, the Waller series will come after Peacemaker 2. Now, I think originally maybe that was going to come before it, but that's how it's working out now. And I think it will be very otherworldly and it could be very, very interesting. Now, Jeremy Carver, the previous showrunner of Supernatural and Doom Patrol, which is a DC series I absolutely adored, will be running that show with one of the writers of the Watchmen TV show. So it's in good hands. And let's hope it's going to be good. Right. So where are we? So, yeah. So that's basically everything. I think we've got everything out there. But there's something else I also want to talk about. But I want to make sure that I've told you everything. Right. So, yeah. That's it. So, basically, we now know Suicide Squad isn't canon to DC Universe. Peacemaker 1 isn't canon to DC Universe. But something else came out which was very, very interesting yesterday. On Threads, I think it was on Threads, James Gunn was asked when he was told that he could write a Superman film. Now, he said he was given permission to write a Superman film in 2022 by basically co-CEO of Warner Brothers Pictures, Mike DeLuca, in 2022. Now, this came as a big surprise to me, because let's backtrack to when he was fired by Disney and he was brought to WB. He was told by Walter Hamada he could do anything he wanted, but he would like him to write a Superman movie. James Gunn actually told us this. James Gunn told us this as he was marketing The Suicide Squad, that he turned down the opportunity to write a Superman movie so he could write and direct The Suicide Squad. Now, I don't want to contradict what James has said or call him a liar, and I won't. But it was always my theory, and I have nothing to back this up with, but it was always my theory that unless he agreed to write a Superman film, they wouldn't allow him to write and direct The Suicide Squad. I could be absolutely wrong about this. And I think he probably agreed, was my theory a while back before he said this, that he agreed to write a Superman script, a Superman movie, once he did The Suicide Squad and once he finished Guardians 3. Or knowing James, because he multitasks during all of that, who knows? So this would have been pre-Mike DeLuca. Now we know once David Zaslav came in and took over WB and it became WB Discovery, he brought in Pam Abby and Mike DeLuca. So clearly he would have had to have got permission to write this new version of Superman, because I'm sure that Superman was going to be a very different film before Zaslav, DeLuca and Adby came in, for sure. He also told us something very, very interesting, that prior to DC Universe and prior to DC Studios, that this Superman movie was going to be Elseworlds. It wasn't going to be anything with the DC Extended Universe, which means clearly there was never any intention of Henry Cavill being James Gunn's Superman in that movie, even though he was only writing it at the time, and we don't know if he was going to direct it. It was never going to have anything to do with the DCEU. In other words, Henry Cavill was never going to be this man's Superman. Never. He never said Henry Cavill would be his Superman. That was just a bunch of people making assumptions. And the studio, prior to James coming in, didn't help that situation by having Henry appear in the post-credit scene of Black Adam and telling us a bunch of fibs that Henry was returning as Superman. I know Henry reiterated those faults, but actors can only react to decisions made by people that are above their pay grades. And, you know, they want to work in the industry, right? Anyway, so, yeah, it's interesting because I always believed that James agreed to write a Superman movie once he agreed to do Suicide Squad, after he did Suicide Squad. But it's interesting when he was asked when he was told to write a Superman movie was in 2022 when Mike DeLuca gave him permission or told him to. Now this is interesting because I didn't expect him to say the name Mike DeLuca. I expected maybe Toby Emmerich, Walter Hamada, because that's when the real discussions about him writing a Superman movie were going on. And there's something else a bit suspect here. And again, I don't want to accuse, James of any dishonesty because I don't have any evidence. And when we don't have the evidence, we shouldn't make blind accusations. But do you remember just after Suicide Squad was released, I think, or away after that, he was teasing a secret project. Now, that secret project was Superman, right? Because there's no other secret projects, right? Apart from being the co-CEO of DC Studios. But he clearly meant Superman. Let's just make the assumption. Superman was the secret project. Well, I think that was before Mike DeLuca turned up, wasn't it? Or was it? I don't know. So it's interesting because James Gunn was brought to DC at first when Toby Emmerich was in control of Warner Brothers Pictures, when Walter Hamada was the president of DC Films. And we know there were discussions about Superman then. So it's very, very interesting. I mean, look, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. We are where we are, but it is a matter of trust. And you can't keep on telling fans to trust DC, to trust WB, because we've been let down for a very long time. We were going to get a Justice League prior to Snyder. It never happened. We were going to get a Batman and Superman movie prior to Snyder. It never happened. We've been promised so many things. We were going to get a Superman Lives movie by Tim Burton with Nick Cage as Superman Clark Kent. It never happened. We've been betrayed time and time again by the studio. Whoever's been running it, it doesn't even matter. They have, flattered to deceive when it's come to DC. There's so many times we thought we were going to get something. We got a Green Lantern movie, which was a joke. Now, don't get me wrong. There's elements of that film I adore, like all the stuff on OR I thought was really good. I thought Sinestro, played by Mark Strong, was outstanding. But mostly that film wasn't very good, and they wasted $200 million on that. And they put the wrong person to direct the movie. You don't get that guy, the guy who directed GoldenEye and Casino Royale, to make a Green Lantern movie. I mean, he's a great director, but he isn't capable of it. It was a bad move. Anyway, we don't trust them. And I saw someone on Fred saying, we know we've been let down with the DCEU, blah, 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 but people just need to go with it. DC Studios is here. People need to get with the program. No. I'm open to what James Gunn is doing. James is working very hard to create something. I respect that. But don't expect me to blindly tell everyone that the meal we're getting is going to taste good without tasting it. I will judge Creature Commandos on its merits. I will judge Peacemaker 2 on its merits. I will trust Waller on its merits. I will judge Superman on its merits, right? Superman is a film that needs to make $1 billion to $2 billion. Worst case scenario, 750 million to 800 million to $2 billion, right? Does that sound outrageous? Man, come on, no. This is why they own DC. This is why they're making a Superman movie. Do you think it's just for fun? Do you think it's for artistic integrity? They bought DC Comics all those decades ago for this very reason. Do you think a studio buy a comic company because they like DC, because they're DC fans? No, they're a business. They're part of the capitalism, the world, right? You provide a service and you want to make money for it at the end of the day. That's why the DCEU wasn't successful, right? And the DCEU, the problem with the DCEU was they went from Man of Steel to BVS and went straight into production from BVS to Justice League when they should have waited after BVS to see people's reactions. And once they saw that reaction was divisive, they should have said, right, they should have come out with Zack Snyder, as I've said a billion times before, and said, we have creative differences, we are going our own separate ways. Joss Whedon and Jeff Johns will take over and start from scratch, like Peter Safran and James Gunn are doing now. That's what should have happened. That's where the mistakes were. But, they just continued pulling. Snyder was pulling that way and the studio were pulling that way, and it was pathetic. And they were trying to recycle things, and it was never going to work. These people never learn their lessons. And the question is now, will they learn their lesson? But don't expect me to blindly trust something where we've been betrayed time and time again. Now, talking about all the stuff I listed there, about what's DCU canon and what's DCEU canon. For me and you, right, the nerds, if you're watching this, you're a nerd, right, who's interested in this kind of stuff, right? I don't expect any normie to be watching this channel, right? They've got better things to do. They've got a job. They're never on social media, right? When a normie watches Peacemaker 2, Waller, Creature Commandos and Superman, they won't want to do any research, right? I keep on hearing stans and fans telling me about normies and the GA, the general audience. You don't know the general audience. The general audience are just random people who randomly turn up to cinemas. It's not a religion to them. They don't write 60 pages of reviews. They don't go on the internet talking about DC and Marvel or other stuff, right? They're not like us. They just go to the cinema for a couple of hours to be randomly entertained. They do not want to research anything. And this is the problem with what Gunn's doing. He's taking the DCEU, he's taking the Flash movie and used that Flash movie as a backdoor to create DC Universe, right? And the reason for that is because he wants to use his Peacemaker show. He wants to use those characters. As he said, when we've asked him why, he said, because I love that show, I love those characters, that's why. That's why he didn't want to start again. Because of that. That's the main reason. But he's given himself a big challenge because you need the normies, right? The normies are not so important when it comes to streaming. But in terms of Superman, everyone who goes to the cinema, stans and nerds and letterboxed people and the GA and the general audience all need to be sitting in the cinema together for that movie to make the money it needs to make. And the general audience are not going to be interested if they have to do their homework, right? We've seen this with the MCU. There's many reasons why the MCU has failed, has hit rock bottom since Phase 4. One of them is that they don't want to need to see 6, 7, Disney Plus MCU shows to get what's happening in the Marvels. That's one of the reasons the Marvels flop. People will say to you, oh, it's woke, it's this, it's full of extremism, propaganda, gal bosses. And the culture war is part of that movie's failure. But one of the big reasons the Marvels failed is because you need to watch, Miss Marvel and the other shows, right? So Who out of the general audience is going to do that? Is going to study all those MCU shows just to see the Marvels? So people thought, well, bollocks to that. I don't even know who these characters are. The general audience don't really know who Miss Marvel is, right? Captain Marvel made $1 billion, according to them. Well, the Marvels didn't get anywhere near that. People don't want to do homework. People just want to watch movies. Something special happened in the early days of the MCU, where a franchise was created. And because it became fashionable to follow that franchise, people would watch every movie. But once you ask them to watch streaming shows as well as every movie, it becomes like homework, as James Gunn mentioned a few months ago. He doesn't want DCU to be homework. And, that's right. But once you confuse the general audience, you lose them as your audience. And by having to explain to people what's canon and what's not canon is a problem for the general audience. And it is something that's going to kind of, if they keep on being told, oh, well, this Superman movie is part of the old DCEU. Well, it's not, but it is. Yeah, the Flash went back to save his mother, blah, blah, blah. Things change. People lose interest. As soon as you say that, people lose interest straight away. Because people don't want to concentrate on that. They don't want a map, right? Feige used to have these big maps for the MCU. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, this film, that film, that. And at first, people were interested, but then people started looking at them and going, what? What the fuck? I just want to watch a movie. I just want to be entertained, right? It became too complex and too confusing. Even though there's nothing really complex about the MCU, it's basic storytelling. Let's be honest, you don't have to be smart. But when it's all over the place, when you're on streaming, now, James Gunn has said there won't be lots of movies per year or loads of streaming shows, but already we're getting Peacemaker 2, we're getting Waller, Creature Commandos. That's 3 streaming shows already, right? And 1 movie, 2 movies. Basically not 2 movies, lots of movies. I mean, he's announced the slate, but so far we know that Superman is well into production now, and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow will be the next film going properly in production. But we have already 3 streaming shows, right? And 1 movie at the moment in proper production. And the reason I said 2 is because basically Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow seems to be the only film that's actually done any casting. So apart from Superman. But at this moment of time already, we're getting that problem again. 3 streaming shows, 1 movie. Oh, look, Creature Commandos is a prequel to Superman. So if you don't watch Creature Commandos, will you understand Superman? Peacemaker is kind of, it continues after the events of Superman. So if you don't watch Superman, will you understand Peacemaker 2? Do you understand what I'm saying here? And James Gunn may say, well, I don't want this to be homework, but it certainly sounds like homework to me. And again, you can't expect me or anyone else not to ask these questions. You can't expect us, Shills, just to openly not to question things, because it's important for the future of DC. And you need the general audience. The general audience are more important than you and me. Make no mistake, nerds will go and see these movies. Even the ones saying they'll boycott them. They'll quietly go and see them. No question about that. We're not important. We don't need to be convinced. We're important, but we don't. Everyone's important and everyone has value. And everyone's valid. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we don't need to be convinced to see these movies, but the general audience will be. The general audience don't care that James Gunn's responding to questions on threads. That doesn't really say anything, right? All those updates. The general audience don't get involved. General audiences will maybe accidentally watch a trailer when they're watching television or they're watching streaming, and a trailer for Superman may turn up next year and they may see it, right? That's what they do. They don't look out for trailers. They don't wait, they don't watch Super Bowl so they can see all the trailers. Not that we get many trailers at Super Bowl anymore. Do you know what I mean? That's the geeks and the nerds. The general audience just go to the cinema, want to watch something and want to understand it. They did a very clever thing, in the theatrical cut of Superman 2. At the beginning of the opening credits, without any, without any audio. They just had the Williams music over, you know, events from Superman the movie, Superman 78. Now, this was very, very clever because I think Superman 2 was released in 1980 and Superman 78. So that was 2 years since the last movie. There wasn't streaming. Video was in its early days. Not many people had videos. And you couldn't buy movies on videos back in 1980 anyway. Unless you recorded something off a blank tape on VHS, you wouldn't be able to re-watch anything. So they did a very, very clever thing. Of course, we live in a more, you know, technical world now. We can re-watch and watch things whenever we want. But as I say, the general audience don't want to make the effort, don't want to do any research. They just want to go to the cinema and understand what they're going to see. So when they see Superman, they just want a clean slate. They just want to understand that this is a Superman film, that they don't need to see Creature Commandos. And maybe you won't need to see Creature Commandos, even though it's meant to be a prequel to the Superman film and set before the Superman film, right? But if you need to watch Creature Commandos, and this is the problem with cinematic universes, or a universe, right? This is DC Universe. This is a universe of films. Now, I think James Gunn's claimed you don't have to see one thing to see the other, which is good. But ultimately, he's creating a story arc, right? In Lanterns, he kicks off this story arc, whatever it's going to be about, which will be very, very exciting. For us nerds, it's exciting. But I don't think that anyone's going to create a shared universe again like Feige and the MCU did, where millions of people around the world are sitting in the cinema and watching them. Maybe, just maybe, there shouldn't be any streaming content for DC Universe. A bit late now, we're already getting free shows. And we're getting Lanterns as well. And we're getting Paradise Lost. There's going to be a lot of streaming. Is there going to be more streaming than movies? Well, Peacemaker 2, Waller, Creature Commandos, Lanterns, Paradise Lost. That's already 5. That's 5 streaming shows. Superman, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Brave and the Bold, Swamp Thing. So basically there's probably the same amount of streaming as there is movies. I think as well, this is where you're going to lose the general audience. Because as I say, if you have to watch the streaming shows as well as the movies in cinemas, that's a problem. First of all, where are we going to be able to see the streaming shows? I'm in Cyprus. I don't have access to HBO Max. I don't know where I'm going to be able to watch these shows. This is another issue. So I wasn't a fan of creating yet another DC universe, and I was a fan of just doing standalone movies, right? Like Joker Folie à Deux, like Batman, like the Batman 2, like Penguin, that just stand on their own, right? And obviously, even with those, you need to watch one to watch the other. But like Joker, there's no streaming add-ons. That's the great thing about Joker. You saw Joker, you go and watch Joker Folie à Deux. Just like when we saw Batman 89, we could go and see Batman Returns. Now, you're going to have to watch streaming shows in the DC universe to understand Superman. Maybe, who knows? So not only, this is kind of very interesting, not only do you have to maybe even understand the DCEU in a way, or at least to have had to have watched The Flash, then you still have to watch streaming shows, maybe, to understand Superman and the other DCEU movies. And then, beyond that, you have to work out what's canon and what's not. You have to work out that these movies won't be canon to the DCEU. And that this is a new universe, but Peacemaker is kind of connected, even though it's not really connected, right? Peacemaker 1 isn't canon, but some things will stay as canon. If you're a random member of the general fucking audience, who wants to do that? Who wants to think about all these things? It's making my head explode. And these are things that even the shills have to come to terms with. You have to think about these things because this is what, as I say, this is what sunk the MCU. Before, you could watch Iron Man, then go and watch Iron Man 2, then go and watch The Incredible Hulk, Captain America, The First Avenger, right? And those films were being released, what, a year or two after each other? Then they were doing 3 or 4 movies every fucking year. And you had to keep up. Because people can't, look, let's be honest, people can't afford to go to the cinema 4 or 5 times a year just to continue to watch a television series in the cinema, basically. And now there's streaming shows as well. Because they're trying to keep, they thought streaming was the future and they were going to make bags of money. So we got Marvel, we got Star Wars, we got DC on Max. But I think it's a mistake to have the DC streaming shows in the first place. Because as I say, not everyone has access to those shows. There's a lot of people who simply will not be able to watch Creature Commandos or Peacemaker 2 or Waller, or work out what broadcaster, what streamer in their country will be giving them these shows. And with the streaming shows, as I've explained many times on this platform, we don't all get to see them at the same time. A movie's released pretty much around the world at the same time these days. We can all go out there and enjoy the film together and come back on the internet and discuss it together. Have discourse, say it's great, say it's crap, whatever. But with streaming, it's very different. This is the issue. So I think even if you just started with the movies and didn't do streaming, it will be better. What's even worse now is that Creature Commandos is a prequel to Superman and comes before Superman. And will everyone have consumed Creature Commandos before Superman is released next July? That's right, next July. It's a short time, really. It's not that long to July 11th, I think, 2025. And this is the issue. And these are the problems, the general audience don't want to do research. Nobody, no random viewer wants to do research, will even think about doing research. They're going to think we're going to watch a film. And this is the problem. And this is the problem with having a universe split between streaming and cinema screens. It is not a good idea. These are red flags, and I've tried to be open and positive. I still am. I'm excited for all of this. I think this is exciting. But I can't tell you it's definitely going to be great. The only way we can find out is to find out together when we watch them. What I'm saying to you is, I'm not saying to you this is definitely going to be crap or definitely going to be good. We don't know that. What I'm saying to you is, I'm explaining to you that it's very hard for all this to be successful. When you're saying to people, right, this isn't canon to that old universe, that's not canon to that universe, oh yeah, and you need to watch Creature Commandos, you need to watch Peacemaker 2. Do you understand? It's confusing. Not to me and you. You're going to say to me, Mick, it's not consuming because you're a nerd. I'm a nerd. It's not consuming to us, but it's consuming to them. That's the point I'm making. And it's very difficult for this to be successful because at the end of the day, the MCU was, a random throw. It was left field. That's success. You will never get a long-running franchise being that successful, making $1 billion a picture. It was a freak of nature. It was a fashion trend. It will never, ever happen again. And that's what James Gunn, Peter Safran, and David Zaslav are attempting, to create that success again and to say to people, watch this on streaming, then go to the cinema and watch this. No, it's much more straightforward. If the DC Universe was something that just began from the beginning, fresh, nothing to do with anything, and no streaming attached to it, because we can't all watch these streaming shows at the same time. We may not even get access to Creature Commandos before we see Superman. It's a problem. But they're so greedy, and their greed comes before, anything else. So it's not all on James Gunn, because the corporate people are saying, you've got to... That's the thing. James Gunn is not saying, oh, I must make some stuff for streaming. He's being told, you've got to create some stuff for streaming. So that's the problem. The issue with him is not starting from fresh. So you are confusing people. And to deny that and to tell fans, oh, I know about the general audience, they won't be confused. Yes, they will. If you listen to me and you listen to what I've said, even you are confused now. And you understand what I'm attempting to say. I'm not being purposely negative or purposely mischievous. I'm telling you that these are obstructions in the way of this franchise being successful. All Superman should have been is a first step, unconnected to anything else. Now, people have to try and work out what's canon, what's not canon. Oh no, I have to watch Creature Commandos. Where am I going to watch that? This is the problem. And just telling people, don't worry, it will be fine, is simply not good enough.